This is Colin O'Keefe here for LXBN TV. Regulators are paying more attention to privacy and data security than they ever have before. But it isn't just the usual players at the FTC. The FCC is one of a number of regulators getting involved as well. Joining me to explain is attorney Elizabeth Spainhour. She's with a partner at Brooks Pierce and also author on the firm's blog, Digital Media and Data Privacy Law. Elizabeth, first, can you explain why it seems the FCC is going to be involved in privacy regulation? I understand you're drawing on recent comments from FCC Commissioner Tom Wheeler.
That's right. So the news in the area and sort of the immediate catalyst for the FCC's activity in the area of privacy is that the agency had a workshop just last week addressing the issue of Section 222 of the Communications Act and how it might apply to broadband consumer privacy. And so, as you mentioned, Chairman Tom Wheeler was the person who kicked off the workshop, and he had some very unequivocal statements about the importance of privacy. And so the workshop addressed whether or not Section 222, or rather how Section 222 might apply to broadband consumer privacy. So Section 222 is a statute, part of the Communications Act that the FCC administers, and that act requires telecommunications carriers to maintain the confidentiality of certain kinds of customer information. So the workshop was an opportunity for stakeholders to come together in the wake of the much written about FCC Open Internet Order, or also known as the Net Neutrality Order. That is a 400-page monster of a document that talks about a number of very important issues for broadband. Just one of those issues is this Section 222 issue, and whether and how it should apply to broadband internet access service. So what the FCC decided in the Open Internet Order is that yes, Section 222 is going to apply to broadband internet access services, but the FCC decided that its existing rules implementing Section 222 would not apply. Those rules have been around for a long time, and they really were adopted to address voice services and not broadband services. So the Commission, I think, rightly recognized that those rules are not a good fit for broadband, and so the FCC acknowledged that it needs to do more work and more proceedings in this area. So that's sort of the immediate catalyst for the discussion. But I should also say that the FCC has really flexed its muscles in other ways, not just through the Open Internet Order, but there was a recent consent decree that the FCC entered into with AT&T to settle complaints about a data breach to the tune of $25 million AT&T now needs to pay over to the federal government. And even before that, a couple months before that, the FCC issued some pretty significant fines against two other telecommunications carriers for the way that they were securing customer information. So, as you said, I mean, privacy is a really hot area with regulators. It's a hot area with consumers, with lawmakers, and the FCC is getting into the mix for sure.
Absolutely. And second, you mentioned there, and also in your post on the subject, that it does seem like there are certain measures that need to be taken by the FCC for it to fully do what it seems like it wants to do. Can you explain, possibly give your best guess, what's ahead for the Commission now on this front?
Sure. So what just happened, as I mentioned, was a workshop. It was a pretty informal thing, and it was people talking about how these rules might apply. So the Commission recognized in the Open Internet Order that it needed to initiate a new rulemaking proceeding in order for the Section 222 rules to apply to broadband. So what I expect that we'll see is certainly a notice of proposed rulemaking at some stage. What we might see is another workshop. It's certainly possible that there might be another workshop if the Commission still thinks it needs to gather more data informally. We might see a notice of inquiry, which is a precursor to a notice of proposed rulemaking. But at some point, I think we will see a notice of proposed rulemaking that will potentially propose rules, and that will allow industry and other interested parties to provide comments and either support or argue against the proposed rules. So unfortunately, the timing is uncertain, but I think that's what's coming down the pike.
It's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch. As I mentioned off the bat, there are a number of regulators getting involved, but you can see why the FCC, in overseeing broadband and such communications, why it makes sense that they would want to get involved here. So we'll have to keep an eye out and see exactly what happens. Once again, that was Elizabeth Spainhour of Brooks Pierce. For more of her insight on this subject and to track things going forward, be sure to visit digitalmediadataprivacy.com. Thank you for joining me today, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, Colin.